David, welcome to our podcast. Finally, we get to chat on this platform. I'm really looking forward to it. And sure, what an amazing amount of change you've seen over your career of 20 plus years at Shoprite, let alone all the things that went before that. So I am really feeling privileged to have you on this platform today and to share some of your good stuff and your learnings and your gems with the audience and the listeners.
Hey, Louise.
Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. Looking forward to the chats and to the discussion, to sharing some of what I've learned over the years. Gems, I'm not so sure about, but let's see what we find.
Awesome. So, David Jeepers, you have seen so much change in this time. If I just think of all the things that happened, within Shoprite itself, but just in industry. I mean, we've got smartphones, we've got high-speed internet, we've got AI, we've got bots, we've got apps and social media, and a whole lot of things. I guess if you had started your career knowing all of this was coming, I don't know if you would have jumped straight into it. So, speaking of that, how did you land up in IT? I mean, at the time, it probably wasn't a thing in the way that it is a thing now. How did you land up in it?
I studied business science at UCT. I did a major in finance. And at the end of my studying, I went around for various job interviews, and this company, Arthur Andersen, offered overseas training. That was tremendously exciting. The ability to go overseas to the US for 3 weeks for training. So I signed up on the spot. And the first thing they did was they shipped us all to Joburg, put us up at the Bromfontein Hotel, and took us to a 3-week course on training on how to do programming called Computers in Our Practice School. And that's when I learned to code. That was the first introduction to IT. Prior to that, I'd done some homework at varsity on a computer, a little Apple, but I'd never really done any development or coding or anything like that. And then through what was then Arthur Andersen became Andersen Consulting, which eventually became Accenture, and stayed with them and got into IT through that mechanism, or through that route, I should say.
That is amazing.
Certainly wasn't a planned career.
and I think that's so interesting because I think lots of our generation and previous generations landing in IT was almost by chance. I mean, everyone my age, was planning on doing something else, and we landed up in IT. And now the field of IT, when you go and study it, is as big as the rest of everything else. Now,
Louise, you did correct on that one. I mean, back when I was at varsity, computer science was for the deep techies and for the nerds.
Correct.
You can laugh, but my class, I did one semester course in computers in first year 1982 at UCT. First semester, we did an introductory to course of programming.
Yeah.
We used punch cards. We actually used punch cards with those horrible machines. And back then, computers was an arcane science that was out there. Only the really deep techies, the really deep nerds got into it. It certainly wasn't a career choice for very many people. And it was really the beginning of the computing age back then.
It's incredible. Looking back at it, I mean, there's really so much change, but what are the things that really stand out for you as maybe the biggest of those big changes?
So many, as you mentioned. Probably the single biggest was the rise of the internet. The internet and all associated changes with that really did change the whole world. Prior to that, moving away from mainframes to client-server computing, the introduction of the home PC, of course, was a major shift in computing. When I started working, everything was on those large floppy disks, the 5.25-inch floppy disks, which used to hold 360K.
Yep.
In fact, there was a discussion in my second year of working as to whether my desktop PC should have a hard drive or not. Did it need a hard drive? Eventually, it was concluded, yes, it did need a hard drive, and should it have a 10 or a 20 meg hard drive? Meg, not gig.
Yeah.
And just decided actually I could do with a 10 megabyte hard drive, because no way would you ever fill up a 20 meg hard drive.
Yeah, of course. Who on earth would put that much information? Who would have that much information to put onto a drive?
What fool? But you talk about change. It's really the rise of the internet combined with the home computing, combined with the high-speed telecommunications networks around the world. That convergence has changed everything. And then, of course, Moore's law giving us increased computing power at the desktop has revolutionized. I mean, the things we do today with the touch of a button. Do you remember Star Trek?
Yes, of course.
Back in the 80s. And they'd beam down to a planet, and Captain Kirk would reach into his pocket and reach out this little box. And he would talk into it and talk up to the starship above, his communicator.
Yes.
And we laughed.
Uh-huh.
Oh, to talk on a phone, you need wires.
So it's really fascinating, though, because I always find that especially science fiction movies tend to almost precede the technology advancements. It's almost like we innovate through science fiction. And it almost gets scary if you look at all the apocalyptic kind of AI taking over the world movies, and they seem to at least have changed their course. It seems that humans get control a little earlier and learn how to live with these machines a bit earlier in the movies. So maybe there's some hope.
There's a lot of truth that came out of science fiction in the early days. Obviously, some wildly inaccurate projections as well. So there's a certain amount of survivor bias in there, where we select the things that actually did come true. But a lot of things that were said back then actually have happened. Hypersonic travel, return space flights, communicators, wireless communicators. But it's also interesting to see the limits. I remember reading Isaac Asimov, where 1,000 years into the future, post-apocalypse, there were still libraries. Of course, it's all now digital. So there were things that they didn't quite go far enough, if you like, in what they were seeing changing, how fast it was going to change, because it was just unimaginable. The pace and scale of change and what's possible today was quite literally unimaginable. It wasn't a linear projection of from here to there. It's been step change and paradigm shifts that have completely revolutionized the world.
And I guess
we'll continue to do so.
Yeah, I guess even if you look at the likes of SAP, I mean, we're now approaching a time with all these large language models built into the technology, where it's no longer far-fetched to talk to your ERP system and have it produce things or have it report things. So even in that space, things that we thought, well, ERP is ERP, and then there's everything else that's cool. Well, they've also converged.
It's starting to change. I mean, as we speak. So the interactions with your PC are now becoming more and more conversational, still largely text-based, but that's more and more habit. How often when you're driving, do you dictate a message and your phone automatically translates it to text? And within SAP, your text-based, your question-based analytics are coming in. All of that sort of analytics and also the sustainability information that is now being pulled from all the different aspects of your systems, from the fixed assets, from your wastage, from your general ledger, all that information being pulled into single sets of reporting without you really having to do much with it. The intelligence is being built into the platform so that it automatically happens for you. And all that time is now spent with more value add stuff rather than the mechanical. It's incredible happening.
No.
You talk about it, conversational ERP.
Yeah.
The start is already with us, right? I mean, SAP has shown that.
Yeah, no, it is incredible. I think and it's just what also amazes me is that the speed of change is exponential. So because it's all changing at the same time. So I think the amount of stuff that we saw in the last decade or two there's going to be so much more of it. Although we constantly get to a point where we think, well, there's not much more that they can dream up to do, but we end up proving ourselves wrong every time. David, you must have taken some significant risks in your career as well. What would you think, or what would you say was the biggest one that you took, and how did it or didn't it pay off, or how did it change your trajectory?
That's a very, very interesting question. And from my side, I left Accenture the end of 2003.
Yeah.
And I was casting around looking for something to do. And I got this opportunity through Accenture to go down to Shoprite and give the then CIO Fat some input on what was happening on a particular project. And he asked, after a couple of weeks of analysis and investigation, he asked me, so what would you do? And I took a piece of paper and I drew out for him and I said, yeah, this is what I would do. This is the approach. And this is the governance of that project. This is how it should be managed. And he looked at it, he asked a few questions, and he pushed it back over the page to me, over the desk to me. And he said, okay, do it. Right then, because I hadn't done hands-on project management at that stage for probably 5 or 6 years. I'd been in an executive position at Accenture, and I was being asked to do hands-on project management of a very significant project for a very large retailer. And I then had to decide, did I want to do that or not? And did I have the confidence in those old skills, those old project management skills that had lain rusty for a couple of years? And I took on the project, and it was tough. It was really tough and hard going. And of course, it changed the complete trajectory of my career and gave me opportunities that I'd never dreamed of.
That's amazing. That's really...
it's a different sort of a risk. Yes. But at the time, it was a clear decision point of, do I go this way or that way? It was a T-junction.
So that makes me think of if you had to advise young people entering into the market, because it's a different kind of generation that's entering the market. But I think there are some commonalities in terms of youngsters needing guidance, wanting to also find their feet and doing their own thing. And I think, it must be really hard to navigate coming into this strange yet familiar world with all these options. If you were to advise young people entering the market, tips and tricks on things to do and things not to do, do you have any gems that you would share with them?
I would say that it's actually something that was said to me very early on in my career. One of my bosses, I've forgotten who, said to me, David, I can't always promise you a job. I can't promise to keep you employed, but I promise that you will always be employable.
Oh.
And taking that onus on yourself to be employable, keeping your skills current and keeping your options open is, I think, very important. I've seen a lot of people get into technologies or into career paths that are very specialized, and they find themselves after a year or two, they go, this doesn't feel nice anymore. I don't want to be doing this anymore. But by then they've specialized too far. So I think it's very important that you keep on exploring, that you keep your skills current, and you keep on being curious. I've had a number of people come to me say they're unhappy doing this, they would like to be doing that. How can they go about it? And I say, okay, here's a set of courses you have to do. Here's a set of qualifications that you can try get, and go for it. And suddenly you see them come to life and blossom because they have taken the chance and they've kept themselves curious enough to find something new. Don't expect your boss or your company to tell you what you need to do. Find it for yourself. So keep curious, keep exploring, and keep taking chances. Something else I'd strongly suggest, you can correct me if I can't say this, but don't take shit. Stand up for yourself. You're a valuable employee. You may be starting your career, but that's no reason to be treated badly. And what does treated badly mean? No one should be shouting at you. You don't have any reason to be shouted at. You do your job, you do it well. That's what you're being paid to do. but don't take abuse, don't take discrimination, don't take being yelled at, don't take being sworn at, don't take any sort of nonsense like that that isn't in professional meaning, helping you and moving you forward. Pressure? Yes. Take the pressure. Work hard. Not all the normal stuff. You've heard it a million times. But I would say that a lot of people feel when they're starting their career, they must take anything that's thrown at them. And I think that if you stand up and you actually are responsible in your actions and reactions, it'll stand you in very good stead. You won't turn around afterwards and say, why am I taking this abuse? The answer is don't. It's easy to sit back with retrospective vision, looking with hindsight and saying, these are the things that you should do. When you're in the situation, it's hell of a tough. And I've certainly seen a number of pockets within various companies where people are being abused, be it sexual harassment, be it racial discrimination, be it users phoning them and shouting at them, being it completely unreasonable work pressure. When I say unreasonable, like 18 hours a day, and then why aren't you at work at 7 o'clock the next day? And by the way, why did you have your weekend plans? As an example, about 2 weeks before I got married, my boss at the time phoned me and said, David, the project you're on is under severe pressure. I went, yes. He said, is there any chance you can delay your wedding? I said, no.
Depends on if I'm still going to have a chance of getting married. Oh, wow.
But the answer was no. This has been planned for a long time. Sorry, I'm not changing my life to fit in with this. And work continued, and the client was very happy.
It's actually amazing advice, because I often hear people saying, some of the youngsters entering the market are not prepared to put in the hours and this, that, and the other. But yet we come out of a time where we keep saying, oh, work-life balance is important and we need to make time for, it's a thing about if you don't make time for health, you're going to have to make time for illness. Yet we often judge youngsters if they're not kind of working themselves into the ground in the process. And I think your advice on, not taking any behavior that is not right is good advice, because you're also creating young leaders, and the behaviors that you instill in them from early on are the ones that they are most likely to still display when they are in leadership positions and having to take youngsters under their wing. So I think that is generally sound advice. It's even sound advice for the young upcoming AIs that are listening and having to learn from human behavior, which which we have not been very good at being nice to fellow humans. In general, I still think we should just get AI to solve the problems that we seem unable to solve. But I mean, that's the thing, right? We need to set the example in terms of our behavior for the youngsters, but the AIs, if they're also learning from us, then it's as important. And I guess it's that balance between between not taking bad behavior from someone else, but also taking responsibility in displaying the right behaviors.
I think that's a very important point. I remember from my first year economics, our lecturer wrote on the board TANSTAAFL, Tanztafel. And we all looked at her, what was that? And the answer was, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. If you want to get ahead, you actually have to put in the hours. You can be not the hours, sorry, that's the incorrect way of phrasing it. You have to put in the effort. If you want the reward, you have to put in the effort. And you have to be willing to take sacrifices along the way to get where you want to get to. Where you want to get to is up to you. But don't expect that if you take a half-day job that you're going to end up as CEO one day.
Correct. Agreed.
Don't expect that when the company asks you to do something that is a bit above and beyond, and you say, no, sorry, that's not my job. Don't expect then that when you go to the company and ask for something, the company would do that for you.
Yeah.
There is a quid pro quo. There's a give and a take. But if you want success, however you measure success, and the different measures for that, which is another whole conversation. But if you want a balanced life with a reasonable degree of comfort and success, you do need to put in the effort,
Yeah.
the training. I met an Uber driver.
Yeah.
And as one does when one sits in an Uber, you get chatting to them and ask, well, where are you from? And this guy was from Kenya, and he had arrived in Cape Town and taken a job. The only job he could get was as a security guard. And he took his weekly pay and he saved it. Every week he saved his money. And on Friday night, when his mates were out having parties and drinking, he was at home sleeping. And Saturday morning, then when he was due on the job, he was there at 8 o'clock, and all his mates were hungover. And fast forward a year, and suddenly he was the shift supervisor, and he was having to go around to all his mates who were still security guards and wake them up.
Cheapest.
And he saved his money, he worked himself up, and eventually he bought himself a car, and now he's an Uber driver, and he is slowly saving up money to buy a second car. Nothing genius,
Yeah.
but he's putting in the hours, he's doing the work, he is doing what is required to move himself forward and up his game. And he's brought his family out from Kenya, and he's working himself up in the world by just doing what it takes.
I think that's
Nothing for free, tanstafel.
that's incredibly powerful, I think, and it's that we used to have a CEO that said it's it's the stuff that you do every day that makes a difference, which really resonates. It's that consistency
Yeah.
and what you said earlier about showing up, bringing your
Yeah.
attention and your focus and your energy to the game. David, what is your favorite gadget of all time?
Oof. My smartphone, no question. I think it's everybody's favorite gadget. Although it's a debate between that and the TV remote. I'm not sure.
But at least now you can do this
smart-
on your smartphone as well. Is there any
2-in-1.
is there any old technology that you miss?
Not really. We replace technologies because there's something better that comes along.
True.
So old technologies, the Palm Pilot. The Palm Pilot was great. You could write on it, etc. But
Well, yes.
now with your keyboard on your phone, do you need that? And now with voice dictation, direct to text,
Yeah.
I don't miss the old technology. You look back at them with some nostalgia. Reef, remember fax machines?
Yeah.
They were revolutionary when they came. And then we had fax to email and then email to fax. And suddenly we didn't need faxes anymore. So don't really miss the old technologies because they were replaced for a reason.
Yeah.
And I'm not one who looks back and says, oh, the good old days, how great things were then. I think what we have today is really phenomenal and amazing. And if we can deal with the future that's coming at us at pace in a mature way,
Yeah.
and I talk about that very glibly, I know, but there's scary challenges ahead. And I think we can navigate them. You mentioned AI. We'll talk more about that, I think, in a bit. But the past is in the past for a reason.
Yeah.
It was good while we had it.
Very true.
I remember sitting at one of my clients.
Yeah.
There's an old story. Sorry, I'm going to reminisce. Email today is encrypted and encoded, and nobody can view your emails. They're private.
Yeah.
I remember sitting at a client when we were still on the mainframe with two of the operators. And these two guys, all email was on the mainframe.
Oh, goodness.
And these two operators used to sit and watch the emails, scroll past and read the emails.
Oh, gosh.
And they could tell you who was getting an increase and who was going to get fired and who was having an affair and who was stealing. And all the secrets of the company were laid out for them in clear text as they scrolled past on the mainframe.
Yeah.
Do I miss the old technologies?
It's almost, and that was almost a step up from the old switchboard technologies, the number assemblies.
Number assemblies, good grief, yes.
If you think back on your career, is there a moment, I mean, I'm sure there are a few moments, but let's see if we can put you on the spot to think of perhaps one that stood out where
Mm.
you stood back and thought, hang on, what I'm busy with now is making a difference in the world. It's, it's making the difference in the lives of people. Is there a moment like that that you can think of?
Working at Shoprite and working for a company with, and I'm not trying to turn this into a Shoprite promotional exercise, so, but where Shoprite does a huge amount for communities
Mm.
and for the underprivileged. And again, I don't want to start raving about Shoprite particularly, although I do believe it's a fantastic company, obviously.
Mm.
The fact that I was able to contribute towards the efficiencies of the company and driving down the costs of operation, which allows the company to be profitable and to continue contributing towards society and benefiting the 160,000 employees of Shoprite.
Mm.
That's the direct employees, plus all the contractors, plus all the suppliers, plus all the service providers, etc. That gave me a lot of satisfaction. I think if I'd been working for a company that was purely profit-based, that didn't have such a strong social ethic, that would have been problematic for me. I really enjoyed having the feeling that I was contributing something towards South Africa, not just towards Shoprite.
Well, I think that is
I don't know if that's...
that is amazing. That is truly amazing. So, and on different levels, because on the one hand, yes, it's the bigger purpose, and it's really serving the communities that we operate in, and it's really, I think, giving back to life, which is amazing. And in that, there's also the technology component. I mean, the innovations and stuff that you guys came up with is, you talk about a fax machine. I mean, you know, when we talk about instant deliveries, we talk about 60/60, like we talk about Google for searching. It's,
Yeah.
you I think you got to be involved with so many things that were groundbreaking in our local environment, and the timing was phenomenal. I mean, immediately when people needed it, Shoprite just seemed to appear and be there, ready with the technology to deliver things. It just, and I don't mean deliver just as in deliveries. I mean just provide things. And then it's so not to go into that too deeply in this conversation, but it's just amazing to me thinking about the things that were launched, and then at some point you'll see, oh, hang on, now you can link your extra savings card, and it's like what's needed is this now. So we build this, and then we figure out how these things can make even more, can make each other work even better. That's just what it seems to me to be like from the outside, and to do that in an environment where you truly are making a difference in the local community, I think it's just that is amazing. I think that must be very fulfilling.
It was incredibly fulfilling, and the sequence of events that you've described started about 7 years ago, when we looked at Shoprite and said, what do we need?
Yeah.
We need an ERP that can help this company step up and step forward in a major way. So we undertook a major SAP implementation, ran for about 2 years. We rolled out to 2,000 branches in the space of a year. At peak, we have about 15,000 active users logged on simultaneously, usually on a Monday morning. And what that did is it laid down a platform that the whole company now operates on. And it's a standard, it's the same process, it's the same data. We all can see the data, understand the data, report on the same data, using the same transactions in a similar way. And that same base, that was the foundation. And from there, we then said, okay, what's next is our customers. We have to reward our customers. So that was the launch of Extra Savings.
Yeah.
And then from there, okay, now how do we get groceries to our customers better and more efficiently and make shopping for our customers frictionless. And that then was the launch of 6060. And so it's gone. Each step then builds on the previous one, keeping the customer in mind, trying to make their lives easier. So during lockdown, the early stages of lockdown, Peter Elbrecht came to office one day, our CEO, and said, it was actually on a Saturday morning, our customers can't come to our stores, but they still need food.
Yeah.
What do? We had to take our stores to our customers.
Yeah.
That was on Saturday. On Friday, the first shop on a truck rolled out of the DC. So 1 week later. But it all rests on that common platform. Having SAP as the ERP that we could build the business upon was absolutely phenomenal. It has served us tremendously well.
That is really incredible. And, especially the view of what is it that the customer wants. Because if I think of the attention to detail that must have gone into all of those things, down to those shopping bags, it's almost like they're invincible. They're almost unbreakable. You have to almost try to break them. It's just like every tiny little piece just fits together in the right way. That's really incredible.
And we've made mistakes along the way. Don't get me wrong. We've certainly made mistakes, and that's very important that we recognize that. We try things, and that as a company, we try things, and when they work, that's great, and we build them, and we invest in them, and we grow them. And when they don't work, we learn from them, we kill them, and we move on.
Yeah.
And personally, that's important as well, right? As an individual, you try things. Does that work for me? No, it doesn't. Stop, move on. But don't blame. You know that horrible corporate blame game? It wasn't me, it was them. No, it wasn't them, it was them. It's not me who's responsible, it's somebody else.
Yeah.
Except I made the call.
Yeah.
I messed it up. Move on. And that's incredibly powerful that you can make mistakes.
Yeah.
And you must make mistakes, otherwise you're not trying.
Yeah. So people often ask, if you could tell your 20-year-old self, give them advice, what would it be? But I want to ask the question slightly differently. Is there anything that you know now that you didn't know at 20, which you're glad you didn't know at the time?
I think two things. Firstly, that life can be very hard. Life can be very demanding of you. And when things happen, it doesn't happen evenly. It all happens at once. And then you'll go through a long period of peaceful and joy, and then suddenly everything will happen again. And it'll be a project crisis and a home crisis and a family crisis and a work crisis, and it all happen at the same time. And I'm kind of glad I didn't know that in advance.
Okay.
Because you can't prepare for it.
Yeah.
And if you spend your life waiting for it to happen, it's not good.
Yeah.
And similarly, and I suppose in a similar vein, that people aren't perfect. Your relationships are not going to be perfect. Not your friendships, not your work colleagues, not your spouse, although my spouse is perfect, I must say. The relationships aren't perfect. People aren't perfect. People make mistakes. And I'm glad I didn't know that. And at the time, we all live with this Hollywood dream of the perfect boss, the perfect spouse, the perfect friend, the perfect whoever. And nobody is. Nobody's perfect. And perhaps it's a good thing that we didn't know that, because it gives us this optimism to go into relationships that we then discover along the way how to adjust and to mold ourselves and help our partners mold themselves as well. We fit together at work and at home.
Yeah.
It's a strange life, isn't it?
It is indeed. It is. Thanks. That's really quite insightful, David. I don't know if I would have been able to answer that question, let alone being put on the spot with it. So that is speaks of your wisdom.
Thank you.
So, and I think that's a logical place to ask the next question, which is, I think, the scary one. How do you feel about this transition from full-time, busy work life, chasing all these things, keeping all these things together, thinking about yourself and your teams and the world and everything else? How are you feeling now, standing kind of on the brink of moving into retirement?
It's something that happens incredibly quickly. I've been working in the same field and the same sort of a job for 40 years. And then suddenly one day you turn around and say, wow, next month I turn retirement age. Suddenly you start preparing for it. And it's incredibly daunting because to date, my life has been structured. At work by 8, come home from work, exercise, dinner, etc. But it's been a structure. Work for 5 days, 2-day break. Every year, take a couple of weeks of vacation if you can fit it in, and you should fit it in. And now suddenly there's no structure. And I'm starting to come to terms with learning what that means. That it's okay to take the dog for a walk. It's actually a delightful activity. That it's a good thing to go foraging in the forest and looking for mushrooms because that's a fine thing to do. It isn't about the work achievements, etc. It's now about a lot more about what do I want to do and how do I choose to spend my time rather than having to work for a living and be at work by X time and achieve the following outputs and produce the following reports, etc. It's a change of pace and a change of heart that is difficult to come to terms with. And if one can separate, which I'm learning to do, the work value that one adds from the person value that one adds and it has, I think that's important. And that's a learning. It's not something that to me came naturally. Other people may come a lot easier, but it's something that I'm learning to do and adjusting to over time. It's a bit daunting, to be honest.
I can imagine. So do you think that you could get used to that fairly quickly and enjoy it, or are you keen to still be involved somewhere somehow in maybe a advisory or consulting capacity? Because I mean, David, I met you, I remember years ago at a Gartner event in Barcelona, and you are very good at maintaining, keeping networks and at using your connections in those networks to have discussions and bounce things off and advise. And I mean, I know I've always really valued our conversations and the guidance that you've been able to give. So it feels like it would be great if you were open to still share some of that advisory and that knowledge, even if it's not on a full-time basis.
Louise, I don't want to be sitting at home and walking the dog and foraging for mushrooms all day, every day. I would like to be helping where I can. I like to make a difference and to leave things better than where I found them. I like to try and help people avoid some of the mistakes I've made along the way. And I'm open to those sorts of discussions. I don't see myself being full-time employed again. But where I can add value to an individual or to an organization, I'm more than willing to discuss and to have those sorts of, discussions is the right word. And we can see what comes out of it. So it is a matter of seeing where I can add value rather than me having to find work and keep myself busy. So that the balance of retirement that I spoke about earlier, where being okay to do home things and personal things, but at the same time wanting to, one, keep my mind busy and sharp, and two, give back a little now to people and to organizations that can benefit. That would be great.
Because I think, especially if you look at things like reciprocal mentoring, the youngsters are digital natives to the core. So I think the concept of reciprocal mentoring is to me quite appealing because surely there are many things that we can learn from youngsters, but there's definitely also a case to be made for those who've been around for long enough and have been in the industry for long enough to just bring a bit of that calm and a bit of that. And I always think back to a consultant that I used to work with many, many years ago, also a few decades ago. He used to head up the MM team in those days in the SAP realm. And when the rest of the project was in chaos and it's crunch time and everyone is running around, he would be like the steady state, just been there, done that, seen it all, knows how these things will play out. And that's always stuck. And I think that brings so much calmness to that chaos. And that's something that I think, the youngsters could certainly help them just to help navigate all of this and get that feeling that it's going to be okay. The world's not going to break. It's not going to fall apart. Tomorrow we just deal with the next thing, and the day after that we deal with the next thing, and so forth.
I've been incredibly honored and touched by a couple of people who've reached out and asked me if I would mentor them and just have the odd chat with them here and there, on a more or less informal basis. And I find it incredibly humbling that they get some value from the discussions and that I can give back and help them in their careers.
Yes.
And these are people, some of them right at the beginning of their careers and some of them very much at the top of their game. And it's incredibly interesting to speak to people and find the common challenges that we face and ask them questions that I wish I'd been asked 10, 20 years ago. It's just an exciting process to go through.
Yeah.
And as I say, very humbling.
So to veer off that topic slightly, but not entirely, how do you think, I mean, we've spoken a little bit about AI. How do you think AI would impact everyday life in the near future?
In the near future, it will be incrementally like the internet. It'll build step by little step, but it'll be more and more there. We've already seen the house cleaning robots.
Yeah.
We will soon see self-driving cars, maybe 4 or 5 years. That'll start happening more effectively. Typing will become less and less required. We will start speaking to our computers more and more, and a lot of the tasks that we now have to do, the mechanical stuff we have to do, will be fully automated. We won't even see it. It'll just quietly start happening for us. Security is going to become increasingly sophisticated and AI-driven. And that AI-driven world is happening already, very much, very quietly, without ever seeing it, without noticing it, I should say. A lot of hype about Gen AI, but there's so much AI already in play in our workplace, in our homes, that we always take it for granted. We don't really even see it. That's going to step up bit by bit. Longer term, of course, is a whole different question about the structure of society and the jobs, etc. I read an article by, I've forgotten her name, my apologies. And she put forward 2 potentially opposing scenarios for AI, which I found fascinating. I can't reference her without knowing her name, my apologies.
That's okay, David. We can come back to that in the show notes. We can put a link in the show notes maybe for listeners, and they can find it.
See if I can find it. But she said one of the problems in Europe is aging populations, and in America and in Japan, aging populations and fewer people entering the workforce. Is it possible that AI will automate a lot of those jobs and therefore take care of that problem for us? That's the optimistic view of AI.
Yeah.
The pessimistic view of AI says, well, AI will introduce so fast and so quickly, it'll automate the hell out of a lot of jobs and make them irrelevant. And we'll end up with wide-scale unemployment and therefore social unrest and instability, which is true. And it's interesting, the upsides that you mentioned, the optimistic possibility, but we will find out shortly. Obviously, one hopes it'll be positive, optimistic view. I think there's huge potential for AI to give us all a lot more time back in our hands.
Mm.
The question, of course, then is what do we do with that time?
Yeah.
And I don't think society is really ready in many cases to deal with that question.
Mm.
The old saying that the devil makes work for idle hands,
Oh, yeah.
that could be quite dangerous for us.
Fully agree with you, because I think people tend to use technology to fulfill their own needs and desires and live out their own beliefs. I
Yeah.
remember in my studies, I was actually in one of my assignments looking at social media, thinking that, and it was around multicultural teams and cultural bias geographically. Cultural bias. And I remember thinking, so I started this assignment thinking, okay, but something like social media would obviously be a good platform for those who are not comfortable speaking up or speaking out to voice their opinions. And when I started researching, it turned out it was almost the opposite. It was people used even social media in a way that suits their culture. Um, it's almost like when you do research, but you bias towards the answer that you're wanting to
Yeah.
find. It's
Yeah.
the same.
It's exactly. Yes.
We just live in such interesting times, and with really nothing but speculation in terms of what is to come in the near or far future. And the most likely scenario could be that nothing changes in the normal day-to-day life of anyone for the next 10 or 15 years, other than having a whole lot more cool tools. Um,
Yep.
so yeah.
But I think the career choices that the youngsters are making, probably not today. I think the current generation of people who are at university entering workforce are okay.
Yeah.
But I think that my grandchildren, the next generation on, need to think very carefully. All the knowledge-based careers are potentially at threat because I don't need necessarily an engineer to design something. I can get AI to do it.
Yeah.
I don't need a copywriter to write something. AI can write something for us. I don't need a lawyer to draft a contract for us. I can just get AI to put a contract together, an ironclad contract. Doctors and diagnostic tools will be automated to a large extent. I've seen empathy tests of AI versus doctors, and the AI often wins because maybe the doctor's having a bad day, but AI doesn't have a bad day. So I think the future of careers and education is something that a lot of societies are going to be looking at quite carefully in the next generation or two. As I say, short term, we won't notice the changes. They'll come upon us incrementally. But in 10, 20 years' time,
Yeah.
Louise, would you advise your newborn grandchildren to go into development, become programmers?
Nope.
Nope. Nope. Because I think that job's going to be automated, or not automated fully, but in the hands of the end user. The development tools are becoming so powerful that within the next 5, 10 years, it'll be end user computing.
For sure. Yeah, in the truest form of the name. That's very true.
Exactly.
So something that I think is quite an exciting prospect as well is just as the access to internet, and especially if you can get that free internet access and free broadband access everywhere, combined with AI and just the access to tools and to information, it could have such a big positive impact. Again, some people will use it for their negative intentions, others will use it for positive intentions, but just the ability, of some kid having to solve a problem for his family somewhere, and having access to tools and information and things to solve those problems with. So
Yeah.
it's distribution of, it's almost like a distribution of power. That we haven't seen before. So that is also very exciting, I think, in a way. That's one of the better scenarios.
Very, very much so. There are some very scary things happening as well out there. The evolution of something like Neuralink, which allows potentially to read thoughts,
Yeah.
is an absolutely frightening prospect, not because of its power for good, which is immeasurable, but because equally its power for evil
True.
And thought control, the thought police a la George Orwell, is an absolutely horrific concept to think about. But it's coming. It's out there. And what effect that's going to have on the world. So as you say, there will be people who use and abuse it, but there's so much good potential out there and so much positivity that is possible. Very exciting.
Yeah, no, definitely. David, this has been a wonderful chat as always. I always walk away with definitely lots of things to think about when I have any conversation with you. So thank you for that, for this podcast, and for all the conversations over the years, and hopefully the many more to come. But thank you very, very much for your time. Really appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners will also really appreciate the insights that you've shared.
Thank you, Louise. It's been an absolute pleasure, both over the years and today. Thank you for the opportunity to chat.
You're welcome.